Superman is American Jesus. Or at least he became American Jesus. Some claim that the new Superman movie has abandoned his old ideals, but I think this movie actually represents a closer return to form of that post-World War II era Superman than we've seen in a while. Superman, the big blue Boy Scout, asks of us Americans, what would Superman do? Mostly through his motto popularized by the 1950s TV series,
"Fights a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way."
The Middle East, as with all places inhabited by humans, is complex. But the current situation in Gaza can be understood through an evaluation of historical events. If we hide behind the complexity of the history in the Middle East, then we miss the opportunity to call what is happening in Gaza now for what it is, a genocide. And yes, that genocide involves a complicated history, which includes claims to the region by various religious groups, immigration of many Jewish people to the already populated area in the early 19th century, alongside British imperialism, a genocide that affected Jewish people in Europe, fueled by anti-Semitism, and then the establishment of Israel shortly after, illegal settler camps in Palestine that the Israeli government turns a blind eye to, acts of terror by both Jewish and Palestinian-affiliated groups, and on October 7th, 2023, the worst death toll for Jews since the Holocaust, with 1,200 men, women, and children killed. However, since October 7th, the Israeli government has killed at least 80,000 Palestinian people and is starving tens of thousands more by destroying their means to feed themselves, as well as preventing foreign aid from coming in. And so the truth is that a disproportionate number of Palestinian people are being killed by the Israeli government. And even if the war on Gaza were to end today, there would still be a generational impact that would affect the lives of those currently living through the situation. Meanwhile, the US and other allies to Israel stand complicit as we send weapons to them while averting our attention away from the crimes that the Israeli government is committing.
I wake up every morning and despite not knowing what to do, I put one foot in front of the other and I try to make the best choices I can. I screw up all the time, but that is being human.
Justice is a process, not a state of being. It's unending. A just society is not characterized by reaching some utopia, but by its continuing reevaluation of what it owes to its people. Superman 2025 asks of the character Superman, what is justice? And on the one hand, Clark is frustrated because people aren't seeing his actions as he sees them. To him, his decision to intervene in Jaranpur was simple. As an arbiter of justice, Superman prevented the murder of thousands of people. But on the other hand, Clark is frustrated with Lois because in an interview he agreed to do,
how about now?
Lois asks how he should have acted and how his actions come across.
In effect, you illegally entered a country, inserting yourself in the middle of an
Hold
incredibly
on a
heated
minute.
geopolitical
Hold on a
situation.
second.
Siding with a nation, Jaranpur, which historically has not been a friend
Jaranpur
to the
has
US,
changed.
against a nation that's technically our ally, and then threatened to murder their head of state.
First of all,
In our own evaluation of justice for Gaza, we can similarly ask how we should act. Should we march in the streets? Should we perform acts of civil disobedience that disrupt other people's lives? But it's important to recognize Clark's point here too.
Yeah, I would question myself in the same situation and hold off a beat and consider the consequences.
people were going to die.
Or in our case, people are already dying. Children are starving. And our sense of justice tells us this is wrong. Children deserve to grow up happy and healthy. People don't deserve to be indiscriminately killed. So we need to act.
Justice and the American way.
Director James Gunn's reconfiguration of the motto to the human way, as well as DC's reconfiguration, A Better Tomorrow, reflect how much America has changed since the popularization of the original motto back in the 50s. Sure, the U.S. has always been an imperialist country, but the history of the U.S. involvement in Vietnam and the Middle East since then have made it such that it's hard for even the most centrist of centrists to support the American way. Let's look at one writer's definition of the American way of life in 1955. The American way of life is individualistic, dynamic, and pragmatic. It affirms the supreme value and dignity of the individual.
His name was Mally.
It defines an ethic of self-reliance, merit, and character, and judges by achievement.
Your actions. That's what makes you who you are.
The American way of life is humanitarian, forward-looking, optimistic. Americans are easily the most generous and philanthropic people in the world, in terms of their ready and unstinting response to suffering anywhere on the globe. But above all, the American is idealistic. Americans cannot go on making money or achieving worldly success simply on its own merits. Such materialistic things must, in the American's mind, be justified in higher terms, in terms of service.
That they sent me here to serve humanity and to help the world to be a better place.
And because they are so idealistic, Americans tend to be moralistic. They are inclined to see all issues as plain and simple, black and white, issues of morality.
I mean, come on, my actions? I stopped a war.
Maybe.
Not maybe, I did.
In a certain sense, we could argue that this Superman is more committed to the American way than we are currently. His actions in Jaranpur, upon which the moral arc of the movie is based, are a prime example of a ready and unstinting response to suffering anywhere on the globe. It's this unstinting belief in the good of his actions that drives Superman to do what he does, until he has to confront why he does what he does. Part of his development is realizing that he doesn't need to attach himself to some inflexible idea of who someone tells him he should be. Instead, he realizes he has reason to trust the good in himself and also the good that he sees in others. Similarly, the movie reminds us to see the good in human life and the bad in destroying it. Whether or not Gunn intended for this movie to be a commentary on Palestine, the fact remains that the message resonates with the Palestinian struggle for independence.
Fights a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way.
So what does Superman ask of us? He asks us to recognize that while a complex and evolving situation, we should stand up against genocide. And we can do this in several ways. We can tell our elected officials not to support any part of the Israeli government's war on Gaza. We can march in protest of the Israeli government's genocide and starvation of the Palestinian people. We can provide aid to the people of Gaza. We can talk with friends and family about the situation in Gaza. We can be critical about the rhetoric that we use to talk about Israel and Palestine, so that we don't slip into anti-Semitic tropes. And we can give our attention to the people of Palestine by listening to Palestinian authors and voices. And while none of this is on the level of stopping an entire country from invading another, our strength, as opposed to Superman's, comes in our numbers. Many people recognize the war on Gaza for what it is and are calling for an end to it. Unfortunately, Superman 2025's most significant deviation from reality is that Superman is able to act before lives are lost. In truth, nearly 100,000 lives have already been lost in the past 2 years, and many more have been severely impacted.
Then threatened to murder their head of state.
First of all, whether or not Jarhanpur is an imperfect country does not give another nation the right to
Yes, but
invade
the
it.
Moravian government maintains they're freeing the Jarhanpurians from a tyrannical regime.
Yes, but you know that's very silly.
I do?
The Moravian government, of all people, is saying this? Come on.
We can call the October 7th attacks by Hamas for what they were: terrorism. We can also call the actions of Israel for the past 2 years since then for what they are: a genocide. For the sake of the people living in Gaza through this, it needs to stop.